So, Ellery, could you tell me a little bit just about your own background in terms of how did you get into music and what kept you playing?
So I started playing fiddle in the Walker came around and demonstrated and played a fiddle tune, not really, in a fiddle way, but it was Turkey in the Street, and asked if we wanted to sign up. So I remember going home and my mom said, "Do you want to play?" And I said, "Yeah." Sometimes it's funny to look back and be like, "Wow, that one little moment like really defined my life." In second grade. Um, so I played all through school, and then I went to an arts high school in Cincinnati for 8th through 12th grade. I had a free period, and I ended up kind of becoming the private teacher of a couple kids who were doing really well in the youth orchestra, like a fourth, fifth graders. And I ended up he would just send them out to the hallway. He's like, "Can you just work with them and give them a little extra something?" And I remember like the feeling of like, wow, it's really rewarding to like work with this kid and help them learn and see them growing. And that was something that happened, early on in my career. I was 18, I was a senior in high school. So I went into science, but I really wanted to play fiddle, and then played in a couple bands after college. And then at one point I went and did a master's degree in traditional Irish music in Limerick because that had just started up and it was a 1-year program. So I was like, I'll go do that. And played in another band. I toured with a band for 4 years. I mean, performing is, people think it's so glamorous, but it's 22 hours of kind of slogging around, 2 really fun hours on stage usually. And then when I had kids, that stopped. And that was sort of when I got into teaching, because it's more of an income stream that's like locally based and kind of steady and doesn't take as much angst and blood, sweat, and tears as like trying to be a performer while having kids, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
You build up your students, and then if you're a good teacher, like it keeps going. Whereas music, performing is much more of a constantly having to promote yourself and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
come up with creative new things. And so, yeah, so I've been teaching now seven years, like kind of full time, as really focusing on private teaching. I mean, the biggest thing was it just starts out slow, and you got to, build yourself up as a teacher and gain the skills, some of which you can learn from talking to other people. And some of it is just like doing it a few times and kind of feeling what works and what doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like, I'm so much of a better teacher now than I was in 2013. I have a husband that has a full-time job, so I had a little more flexibility to like get my kids where they needed to go and slowly allow my
Mm-hmm.
studio to grow. So
What are your values, your goals? What identifies you, your teaching approach?
um well, I definitely feel like, one of my goals as a music teacher coming out of the fiddle tradition is to kind of build up the sense of community. And as a teacher, I love kind of letting them dabble and exposing them to all kinds of fiddle styles, with the idea that like we're going to learn like all these different skills and ways of thinking and feeling the music. And then when you get older and you get a bug to like learn this style really in depth, like you're going to have the tools to do that. Like you can hear and listen, and how to make the sounds on your violin, and
Mm-hmm.
or like how to approach trying to imitate it and learn it.
Right,
So
right.
for me, it's about like giving them those skills that will just allow them to pursue their passion.
As somebody who really loved performing, and that was a big part of your life. I mean, and how does is that one of the goalposts that you have in mind for your students?
Well, we do a little concert at the end of the year, and I kind of mix. They, each one gets like a little solo tune that they play, but then I also like put them together in groups and get them playing like more like jamming performance.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about performing as a kid, the things that were usually the most fulfilling for me were performing in groups. Like I loved playing in the orchestra. I loved um, that kind of thing. So I feel like, it's good to like, I enjoy like getting them up and having them play a solo piece, but I feel like when they play together, it's the
Right.
most fun for everybody. So, we do group classes together
Right.
and a mix of jams, and I do like improvisation games and improvising and just having fun with the music in a crowd. So I would, there's like 3 of those or 4 of those in a semester for me versus one performance thing.
Mhm.
But if a student, and I also feel like some students are really interested in performing and some aren't.
Right.
So if someone were interested in doing that, I had one student that I was sending her coffee shops links. I have a friend that runs a coffee shop for teens, and I was like, why don't you go do this? Like you seem really into doing something like that. Whereas, I have another kid that he would only do the online performance if he could be like this, without his face.
What would you tell a young, maybe recently graduated, violin slash fiddle player that enjoys, working with kids? I mean, what do you think of this as a job? Is this something that you would encourage people that to take on?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, the biggest thing is I love being able to make my own schedule. Just on the practical side of things, like no one tells me where I have to be at, so like as a parent, it's really nice to kind of pick these days I teach, and then these days are when I take my kids to their things, when taking kids to things was a thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, being your own boss is, I think, often a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you control over your life a little bit.
Yeah.
And then just like I said, if you enjoy music and teaching, then it's good for anyone who enjoys like spending time with someone and watching them grow. Because I feel like with teaching, just like music in general, you can never stop improving, thinking creatively, getting better at what you do. Like you can totally like transform and try something completely different, at any point. There's just like, I feel like it's sort of limitless as to what you could do with your students.
Yeah. You were not then teaching for terribly long before you kind of stumbled across FiddleQuest. So, how did you get into FiddleQuest, and what has that experience been like?
I really liked the way that the kids had something to play with at home. Especially in that, like, it is computer based, but it's not like they have to be on the computer to do it. The computer is just a tool to access like the soundtrack they need. But yeah, I really like the sort of immersive nature where it took the best part of computer technology, which was like, oh, we can provide like the listening over and over. The practice steps are so great where you can take it step by step and then play it slowly and then play a little faster. And then, okay, now we can like speed it up and play with this backing band. And the solo feature, I really love that you added last year, which is then it's like, can you do this all by yourself? Can you count it in and figure out where you're supposed to start? And then the solo is so great to use as improvisation setting as well. Like, let's play the tune once. So for example, Corinna is one of my favorite ones where, I start them on the scales and we do improvisation with the scales and we kind of play with that idea for a while. And then when we hit Corinna, I love actually using go on that one. So I'm like, let's play it twice. And then there's that gap in the middle. And I say, okay, now you're going to improvise and you play anything, using the G major scale. And then the 4th time the melody comes back in and I say, but this time you're going to improvise fills. And I have them improvise just like little trumpet things, so they get to kind of play with improvising anything. And then it's like, how do you improvise in this little space? And, I can like, we do Corinna and you learn it in like 2 minutes usually, except for the C sharp is a little tricky, but the rest of the tune is not hard. Mm-hmm. But then you have like weeks of just playing around with it. And because you have the soundtrack, you can just let them like, okay, keep improvising on that. Play it again for me next week. Like, what are you coming up with? And then I'll say, okay, now you can only improvise on like the D string and you can't leave the D string and things like that,
Right.
I have one girl that her grandma sits with her every day. She takes care of her after school and her grandma's learning the fiddle too. and so is her grandpa. So like I did a little online session over Christmas break, and grandma and grandpa were like fiddling in the background, and I was like, this is so sweet, but like I feel like the Suzuki teachers, they get a lot of that kind of parent that's sort of like built into the model. It's like you're coming to this class and you're coming to the group class and we expect this, and so you get that certain kind of parent. But I don't, I'm not going that route as a teacher. Like I want to kind of serve all the different kinds of kids. So then you do get a little bit more of this creative challenge of like, if I'm not setting myself up as like, this is the violin teacher if you're an overachiever, more like, let's play music and have some fun. But also it would be great if you practiced, because then it's more fun for everybody, when you come to the lesson.
If you could, look ahead at for, the next 10, 20 years, I suppose, which is a long way to look out. But what does success for, your students look like?
Well, for me, one of your you've articulated your goal of like just having lifelong players. Students that when high school hits, they don't like put the fiddle under a drawer and forget about it. So for me, that I'd say I share that goal of like, it'd be great if we just built up music as a community again, and like give people the opportunity to keep playing for their whole lives. So it's, not this sense of like, oh, I can only play if I'm good enough to be in an orchestra one day, and if not, then, that there's, the music is available to them, even if it's just like jamming with their band or something, like a, garage band full of dads, whatever. Like that they feel like if they hear music, that they'll have a sense of like, oh, I could just jump in here and join in. Yeah, that music is just part of their lives. It's not like this arcane subject that a few select people get to participate in, that it's actually like should be part of like humanity in our daily lives.